He didn't marry her for the money. At least, that's what he told himself every time he looked in the mirror. The wedding had happened just 7 days ago, in a private garden estate nestled deep in the hills of Sonoma. The kind of place where roses never seemed to die and every glass of wine tasted like it belonged in a museum. But no one really cared about the scenery that day. They cared about the age difference. They cared about the whispers. Her name was Catherine Aldridge. 68 years old. Silver-haired, diamond-wrapped, and sharp as glass. A woman who walked like she had never been told no, and looked people in the eye like she was measuring what they were worth. He was 26. His name was Adrian Reyes. Raised in a part of Chicago where ambition got you killed if you didn't keep it quiet. A busboy. A high school dropout. A face too young to be taken seriously, and eyes too old not to be noticed. They met in a hotel bar in Manhattan. She ordered a martini. He was behind the counter, half exhausted, half invisible. She asked him if he believed in fate. He said no. She smiled and asked if he believed in hunger. That night, they talked for 4 hours. She tipped him $400 and left without a number. But 3 days later, she returned. And didn't leave again. People thought it was a scandal. Some called it grotesque. Others called it brilliant. But no one knew the truth. Not about her. Not about him. Not about the quiet agreement neither of them ever put into words. Because Catherine didn't need company. She needed control. And Adrian didn't need love. He needed out. Out of the cycle. Out of debt. Out of the invisible space where people like him rot in silence while the world claps for everyone else. So when she asked him, not romantically, not even dramatically, if he would marry her, he didn't laugh. He didn't ask why. He said yes. Because he thought he understood the game. Because he thought it would be easy. It wasn't. From the first morning after the wedding, things felt off. Not loud. Not wrong. Just off. Like the house was too quiet, even with all the staff. Like Catherine watched him not with affection, but with calculation, as if she were checking off invisible boxes he didn't know he'd agreed to. And there were rules. He wasn't allowed to bring his phone into the West Wing. He wasn't allowed to open certain drawers in her office. He wasn't allowed to ask about her first husband, the one who had disappeared without a funeral, without a will. It's better not to stir old ghosts, she said with that same impossible calm that made Adrian feel like he was always 2 steps behind a conversation she'd already finished. But something else haunted him more than the rules. It was what happened every night around 3 a.m. He would wake up. Not from a nightmare. From nothing. Wide awake. Heart racing. Like his body knew something his mind couldn't reach. And every night, when he got up and looked out the window, she was gone. Not in bed. Not in her room. Gone. Until one night, he followed her. Barefoot. Quiet. He saw her step into the West Wing, the same one she told him never to enter. But she didn't see him. She walked with the grace of someone on autopilot. Her robe was open. Her hands were trembling. And she was talking. To someone who wasn't there. Not yet, she whispered. He's not ready. He still thinks this is about money. Adrian's blood turned cold. He backed away. Slowly. Silently. Went back to bed. Pretended to sleep. And in the morning, when she served him breakfast herself, eggs, toast, the coffee already sweetened just the way he liked it, she smiled like nothing had happened. But he knew. Something was wrong. The next day, he began digging. Not into her finances. Into her past. But every search led to silence. The kind of silence you pay lawyers to create. No photos from her first marriage. No obituary for the husband. No mention of family. Just press articles from charity events and real estate deals. All curated. All pristine. Too pristine. He called a friend back in Chicago, Darius, someone who used to run low-level background checks for cash. Find everything you can on Catherine Aldridge, Adrian said. Everything. Darius laughed. You finally realizing what you signed up for? Adrian didn't respond. Because deep down, he already knew. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about wealth. It was about control. And whatever Catherine had planned for him, it had already started. 3 days passed. 3 days of her watching him like she was studying a painting she wasn't quite done with. 3 days of sweet breakfasts, polite smiles, and rules that wrapped around his life like invisible wires. Adrian hadn't heard back from Darius. Not a text. Not a missed call. Nothing. And that silence started to gnaw at him in a way that felt more like warning than inconvenience. Catherine, on the other hand, was blooming. She took him to charity dinners where the guests all wore pearl-toned smiles and called her remarkable, like it was a title, not a compliment. She spoke about him proudly, not romantically, but almost like he was her latest investment. Her newest acquisition. This is Adrian, she would say, smiling just enough to be disarming. He's got a mind for reinvention. People laughed, nodded, whispered, and he stood there, like a museum piece behind glass, wondering if anyone else could feel what he felt, that strange sense of being both chosen and trapped. At night, she didn't touch him. Not intimately. Not softly. She would sit beside him on the edge of the bed and ask him questions. What frightened him as a child? What made him angry? What had he stolen in his life? And when he'd try to laugh it off, she wouldn't. Her eyes would fix on him with unsettling stillness, waiting, not for answers but for confessions. You're not what people think, she said one night, voice low. You hide your chaos well. He didn't respond. Because what could he say to a woman who saw through his armor like it was fog on glass? That night, after she finally went to sleep, Adrian got up. He wasn't just curious anymore. He was afraid. The West Wing called to him like a locked door in a dream. He waited until the cameras blinked red, motion off. He'd learned her patterns. The staff left early on Thursdays. The security reset system glitched for a few minutes between 2 a.m. and 2:15, and Catherine took a sleeping pill, the kind that knocked her out cold. He moved silently, barefoot on cold marble. The West Wing was darker than the rest of the house, as if it breathed a different kind of air. The hallway was lined with old portraits. Not paintings, photographs. Dozens of them. All men. Some young. Some middle-aged. Some nearly elderly. All posing beside Catherine. Smiling. But what chilled Adrian to the bone wasn't their expressions. It was the dates written under each photo. Each one was marked with a single year. 1994, 2002, 2007, 2014. There were 11 photos in total. 11 men. All gone. No context. No plaques. No names. Just Catherine. And the years they disappeared from public record. He reached the end of the hallway, where a door stood slightly ajar. Inside, he found a room that felt like a mausoleum. Not a tomb. Something colder. The walls were lined with boxes. Labeled. Numbered. Organized with brutal precision. Inside one box was a set of cufflinks. A letter. A key. Inside another, a passport. Foreign currency. A wedding ring. Each box belonged to a man in the photos. He was staring at an archive of vanishings. Of lives that had once touched Catherine's, and then gone dark. His chest tightened. He backed out of the room, careful not to make a sound. Closed the door. Tried to still his breath. He turned. And froze. Catherine stood at the end of the hall. No robe. No slippers. Fully dressed. As if she'd been waiting. Her expression was unreadable. Calm. Even tender. You looked, she said softly. Adrian opened his mouth, but no sound came. She stepped closer. I was wondering when you would, she continued. They always do. Eventually. His hands were trembling now. What is this? He whispered. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. A lesson, she said. About the kind of curiosity that ends men. And for the first time, he realized something bone-deep and undeniable. He wasn't her husband. He was her test. And the week was almost over. The next morning, the house felt different. Not colder. Not darker. Just sharper. Like every object had edges now. Adrian moved through the kitchen in silence. No one greeted him. The chef was gone. The housekeeper's usual humming was absent. The air was still, heavy with a silence that wasn't accidental. It was curated. Catherine was already seated at the breakfast table. She was reading a newspaper. Not a digital one, a real, ink-stained broadsheet, folded precisely in half. "Did you sleep well?" she asked without looking up. Adrian didn't answer. She turned a page. "You're upset." He didn't sit. "Who are they?" Now she looked up. The smile that curled across her lips was thin, knowing, almost motherly. "You already know. I want you to say it." "Why?" she asked softly. "So you can pretend you didn't see it? So you can pretend it isn't happening to you." His fists clenched at his sides. "Are they dead?" A pause. She set the paper down with precision. "That's the wrong question." He stared at her, heart pounding. "What's the right one?" Catherine leaned back, her expression folding into something closer to pity. "Why did they come here in the first place?" Adrian's throat dried. She stood, walked slowly toward him, her silk robe whispering against the marble floor. "You think this is about murder," she said, almost gently. "You think this is about danger. That I'm some kind of predator." Her fingers brushed the side of his face. "But I don't take anything from anyone, Adrian. They bring it. Willingly. Every man who's walked into this house offered himself." "I didn't offer anything," he said through gritted teeth. "Oh," she whispered. "But you did." He backed away from her touch. "This is sick." She tilted her head. "Is it?" He moved toward the front door, jaw tight, and found it locked. Not just latched, electronically sealed. "No one leaves until I say so," Catherine said behind him. "I'll call the police." She smiled again. This time, she laughed, softly, but with a depth that chilled him. "Your phone hasn't had signal for 2 days." He reached into his pocket. She was right. No bars. No Wi-Fi. No GPS. Cut off. "You don't understand what this place is," she said, walking toward him slowly. "You came here for freedom, didn't you? For security. For escape." He didn't speak. "I gave you all of it," she said. "The house. The food. The silence. No debts. No noise. No one asking you to be more than what you are." Adrian's breath shook. "I'm not a prisoner." She stepped even closer. "No," she said, voice lowering. "You're not. You're a reflection." That word hit him like a slap. "You saw those men and thought they were victims," she continued. "But what if they were just mirrors? What if they came here broken, like you, angry, hollow, aching for control they never had?" Her eyes pierced into his. "And what if I gave it to them? Until they couldn't handle it?" Adrian turned the lock again. "Still sealed." "You think you're different," she whispered. "But I can already see it happening. The tension. The panic. You want to leave, but you don't know where to go anymore." He didn't answer. Couldn't. Because part of him, some buried part, knew she wasn't entirely wrong. He had come here to escape. And now he couldn't remember what, exactly, he'd thought he was escaping from. He went back to his room. Locked the door. Blocked it with a chair. Sat on the edge of the bed, palms sweaty, head spinning. This wasn't just a game anymore. It wasn't just a transactional marriage with blurred lines. It was a psychological trap. And he was already halfway inside it. That night, Catherine didn't knock. She slid a note under his door. 2 words. One left. He stared at it for minutes, his heartbeat in his ears. One what? One day. One choice. One life. He didn't know. But he knew he couldn't stay. He waited until the house was fully dark. Until her light turned off. Until the power cycled again and the lock on the back terrace reset for 90 seconds, just like it had 2 nights ago. He ran. Through the garden. Down the hill. Into the trees. Barefoot. No phone. No wallet. Just instinct and adrenaline. But even as he ran, one thought followed him like a shadow he couldn't shake. What if she let me go? The forest didn't end. It stretched on like a punishment, winding and uneven, every branch clawing at his skin, every shadow whispering something he didn't want to understand. Adrian didn't know how long he'd been running. Time was irrelevant now. Only movement mattered. Movement meant he hadn't been caught. Yet. When he finally stumbled onto asphalt, a narrow 2-lane road, his legs buckled. He collapsed onto the shoulder, breathing like the world was on fire. No cars. No lights. No signs. Only darkness. His feet were bleeding. His throat was raw. He looked back toward the trees, expecting to see headlights, a flashlight, anything. But there was nothing. Just night, thick and unbroken. He stood. Forced himself forward. After what felt like an hour, he saw a light in the distance, a gas station. It flickered like hope, cheap and uncertain, but enough to pull him toward it. The clerk was half asleep behind the counter. Late 20s, earbuds in, scrolling through his phone. Adrian burst through the door, nearly knocking over a rack of energy drinks. "I need a phone," he gasped. "Please, just a phone." The clerk blinked, stunned. Sure, man. You good." Adrian grabbed the landline behind the counter before he could answer. He dialed the only number he remembered by heart. Darius. It rang twice. Then a click. "You better be bleeding," Darius muttered. "Listen to me," Adrian said. "I need you to come get me. I don't know where I am, but I ran from her house." "Whoa. Slow down," Darius interrupted. "You mean Catherine?" "Yes." A long silence. Then Darius said something that didn't make sense. "I sent you the file, man. 3 days ago. Everything I found. Didn't you get it?" Adrian froze. "What file?" "I sent it to your phone." "My phone's dead. No signal." Another pause. "Jesus," Darius muttered. "She must have blocked it. Listen, what I found. It's worse than I thought." Adrian gripped the receiver tighter. "Tell me." "I found 5 marriage certificates under different names, going back almost 30 years. All connected to shell companies. Real estate deals. Each husband vanished, but not legally. Just disappeared. No death certificates, no divorces. Just gone." Adrian closed his eyes. "There's more," Darius said. "She has ties to some kind of private trust. Offshore. Untouchable. I don't know what she's doing, man, but she's got enough legal protection to bury anyone who asks the wrong question." "I saw photos," Adrian whispered. "Boxes. Personal stuff. Like trophies. Then you need to disappear." "I tried. I ran. Not far enough." Adrian hung up before Darius could say more. Because something was wrong. The clerk was still staring at him, not with concern, but with recognition. "You're that guy," he said slowly. "The one from the wedding." Adrian blinked. "What?" "Yeah, man. My mom's obsessed with those magazines. You married that old rich lady, right? The one with the vineyard? Catherine something." Adrian's blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" The clerk shrugged. "You're all over the news. He pointed to the small TV above the counter. Adrian turned. And there he was. A photo of him and Catherine, smiling at the wedding. The headline scrolling beneath in bold red text. Young husband missing. Catherine Aldridge offers reward. His knees went weak. He stepped closer to the screen. The anchor's voice was calm, clipped, rehearsed. Authorities are searching for 26-year-old Adrian Reyes, reported missing by his wife, philanthropist and real estate magnate Catherine Aldridge. Aldridge has offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to her husband's safe return. The screen cut to footage of Catherine in front of reporters, her voice trembling with emotion. If anyone has seen Adrian, please, bring him home. I'm afraid he's in danger. He hasn't been well. He's been paranoid. Scared. He told me he thought someone was after him. Adrian stepped back. Hard. Like the floor had dropped beneath him. She was painting him as unstable. Preemptively. She had planned this. Every step. The phone. The photos. The trophies. Even letting him go. She hadn't lost control. She had just switched tactics. He looked at the clerk, whose expression had shifted. Not hostile, not yet, but curious. You okay, man? Adrian smiled, but it was hollow. Mechanical. Yeah, he lied. I think I'm just tired. He left the station. Started walking down the road again, into the dark. He didn't know where to go. Police. They'd seen the news. Friends. Too dangerous. Darius. Maybe. But not yet. He had to vanish. Because Catherine hadn't just taken control of the house. She'd taken control of the narrative. And now, the whole world believed her. She hadn't chased him. She didn't need to. She'd made sure that wherever he went, he'd already be guilty of something she hadn't had to accuse him of. And as he disappeared into the black silence of the night, only one question remained. How do you escape someone who's rewritten your entire reality? Adrian didn't sleep. Not that night. Maybe not the next either. Sleep belonged to people who could afford to forget. He wasn't one of them anymore. Not after what Catherine had done. Not after seeing his own face on the news framed like a missing poster, like a warning, like a lie polished into truth. He was a fugitive now, and the only crime he had committed was trying to survive her. He stayed hidden for 2 days in a storage unit Darius had rented years ago, behind an abandoned strip mall outside Sacramento. No shower. No clean clothes. Just a mattress rolled in the corner, a duffel bag with some food, a burner phone, and silence. The kind that hums like guilt even when you haven't done anything wrong. The plan, if he could call it that, was to disappear for good. Change his name. Head south. Cross the border if he had to. No more credit cards. No more digital trace. Just air, instinct and distance. But it wasn't that simple. Because she wasn't chasing him. She didn't have to. Catherine was waiting. Waiting for the moment he'd break. And something in him, some fractured part still poisoned by her voice, by her calm, by the way she looked at him like she knew him better than he'd ever know himself, started to believe he might. He turned on the burner phone on the third night. Only one voicemail. Darius. Bro, I don't know where you are, but listen, you don't have long. I checked your bank account. It's gone. Zeroed out. Not even frozen, just vanished. The lease on your apartment? Terminated. Car title's been transferred. It's like you never existed. I don't know how the hell she's doing it, man, but she's erasing you. Piece by piece. You have to fight back. Call me. Erasing him. Adrian sat in the dark, the words bouncing around the metal walls of the unit like bullets. This wasn't just about control. This was about deletion. Catherine didn't want him punished. She wanted him forgotten. He opened the duffel and pulled out the one thing he hadn't looked at since the night of his escape, the note she'd slipped under his door. One left. He turned it over. There was something faint on the back. indented, like it had been written on a pad with a note above it. He held it under the flashlight, pressed a pencil gently across the surface. Letters rose like ghosts. He's the only one who made it out. The words struck like thunder. Someone else had escaped. One man. And Catherine had written it down. Not to threaten him, to test him. To see if he'd find it. If he'd believe it. If he'd chase the truth. And God help him, he did. He texted Darius. I need everything you can find on the man before me. The last husband. The one from 7 years ago. The reply came 3 hours later. Jonathan Keene. Registered in Napa County. Went missing in 2017. Case closed as suicide. No body ever recovered. Suicide. Of course. The perfect ending for a man no one would question. Adrian replied. Family. Estranged. No kids. But his sister still lives in Santa Rosa. Name's Meredith Keene. She works at a library. You sure about this? He wasn't. But he went anyway. He hitchhiked through the night, switching cars 3 times, paid a teenager $50 to let him ride in the back of his pickup under a tarp, kept his hood up in every gas station. And when he finally walked into the Santa Rosa Public Library, he looked like a ghost of the man who'd walked into Catherine's life only weeks before. Meredith Keene was in her 50s. Kind eyes. Straightforward voice. The kind of woman who had learned not to trust anyone after trusting too much for too long. Can I help you? She asked, glancing up from her desk. My name is Adrian Reyes, he said quietly. I think your brother and I have something in common. She stared at him, not blinking, not breathing. Then, slowly, she stood and nodded toward the back room. They sat across from each other at a metal table. He told her everything. The wedding, the estate, the photos, the boxes, the note. And when he finally stopped, she didn't speak for a long time. Then she opened a drawer, pulled out an old file folder. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, letters. All about Jonathan. His wedding to Catherine. His sudden disappearance. The investigation that never led anywhere. I always knew it wasn't suicide, she said softly. But no one believed me. She covered every track. Adrian leaned forward. She missed one. Meredith looked up. You, he said. I want to help, she whispered. But if she finds out, she already knows I found you. Meredith's hands trembled. But she hasn't stopped me, he continued. That means something. Meredith took a deep breath. She's not afraid of losing, she said. She's afraid of being seen. And for the first time since the wedding, Adrian saw the shape of what he was really fighting. Not just a woman. Not even a criminal. But a legend. A carefully constructed myth with power, money, and time on her side. And if he wanted to survive, he'd have to destroy the myth. They met again exactly 1 week after the wedding. Same garden. Same silence. But this time, no music. No champagne. No guests. Only Adrian, standing at the edge of the stone path, and Catherine, waiting for him by the fountain like a memory refusing to fade. She wore white again. Not a wedding dress, something softer, looser. But still immaculate. Always immaculate. You came back, she said, as if it were the natural conclusion to everything. Adrian nodded once. I had to see you, he said. She smiled. You've grown. He didn't return the smile. He took a step closer, slowly. I met Meredith, he said. The smile faltered, not with fear, but with calculation. Of course you did, she said. You always get curious. That's the problem with your kind. My kind. Catherine walked to the edge of the fountain, trailing her fingers through the water. Young. Ambitious. Wounded. You think power is something you take. You don't understand that real power is given. Quietly. Over time. Adrian stepped closer. You erased 11 men. She turned. No, she said softly. They erased themselves. I just made it easier. Is that what happened to Jonathan? Catherine studied him. You don't want to carry this weight, Adrian. Not really. You think this is justice. It isn't. It's a mirror. He took something from his pocket, a flash drive. I copied everything from the vault. She blinked. He continued, calm now, like he was narrating someone else's life. Photos. Boxes. Papers. Offshore records. Transaction logs. I gave it to Meredith. And a reporter in Chicago. And one in New York. By tonight, it's out of your hands. She didn't move. Didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head, almost proud. You think this will end me? I know it will expose you. She stepped forward now, closing the distance between them like a mother approaching a frightened child. But you're still here, she said. You came back. You could have run. But something in you brought you back to me. I needed to look at you, Adrian said. One more time. I needed to know if you were real, or just something I invented to excuse the part of me that let this happen. Her eyes softened. Not with love. But with something stranger. Recognition. You're stronger than the others, she whispered. But not cleaner. You married me for a reason, Adrian. And it wasn't love. Don't pretend you didn't know what you were trading. He didn't deny it. Because part of him had known. Part of him had needed the illusion she offered, security dressed as affection, silence masquerading as peace. But that part of him was gone now. You can't outrun what you've done, she said. No, he replied. But I can stop pretending it was inevitable. They stood in silence. Just two people. Two stories. Two truths finally meeting in daylight. He turned to leave. But before he took his final step, she called out. Adrian. He stopped. I hope you find something out there, she said. Something that feels like peace. But don't be surprised if it feels a lot like me. He didn't look back. He walked down the path. Past the hedges. Through the iron gate. And never returned. That night, the story broke. Headlines on every platform. Widow of wealth, Catherine Aldridge accused of orchestrating series of mysterious disappearances. The press called it a scandal. The internet called it a conspiracy. But Adrian called it freedom. He moved to a small town in Arizona. Took a job fixing motorcycles. Didn't give interviews. Didn't chase justice. Didn't try to explain. Because the truth didn't need defending anymore. It just needed distance. Months passed. He never heard from Catherine again. No letters. No lawyers. No retaliation. But sometimes, when the sun hit the desert just right, when the wind moved like memory through the quiet, he thought about her voice. Not with fear. But with a kind of quiet gratitude. Because some people come into your life like storms. Others, like mirrors. But the ones you never forget are the ones who almost turned you into them. And in choosing not to become her, Adrian finally became himself. If you liked this story, subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.